Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. I'll be flying solo today. All of my co-hosts are busy on the weekend. As you know, this is pre-recorded. I record on the weekend. So the show must go on. We'll do it all solo this hour. Hopefully, all you dads and families had a nice Father's Day weekend. I won't get too deep into some of the political nonsense that went on this weekend. There was a No Kings rally, I guess, a bunch of them scheduled all over the U.S. I saw a very interesting post on X that I just felt the need to repeat. The actual No Kings Day is July 4th. That's No Kings Day. This other stuff is just political hysteria. And that's just my take on it. But hopefully you enjoyed the weather this weekend. Like I said, you enjoyed time with your family, time enjoying Father's Day. But I wanted to first, in our first segment, cover something that happened in New Hampshire. And something that was very good that happened in New Hampshire last week. I'm quoting an article here from the New Hampshire Bulletin. Ayotte signs Universal EFA Bill, Parental Bill of Rights. And this is by Ethan DeWitt and William Skipworth, June 10, 2025. Getting right into the article here. Governor Kelly Ayotte signed two pieces of legislation Tuesday. One to extend the Education Freedom Account program to all income levels, and another to give families more control over their schools, delivering significant victories to school choice conservatives. Let's see. Kelly Ayotte signed Senate Bill 295, which allows families of all income levels to access state funds for private and homeschooling expenses. And she also signed House Bill 10, which enumerates a number of requirements for public schools to respond to parental demands. Quote, no one loves a child more than a parent. Making sure that parents have rights and can understand and know what's happening in their classrooms when their children are in school is so important, end quote, Ayotte said. Let's see. Republicans have hailed the two bills as instrumental to allowing parents the freedom to make choices for their children and avoid mandates from public school districts. Let's see. But LGBTQ plus advocates have denounced HB 10, which they say could require school employees to disclose information about a student's gender identity or sexual orientation to their parents, even when the students ask the school employee not to. So there are still forces within the schools that are trying to hide certain aspects of children's lives. And remember, children are not at the age of accountability. They're under 18. They should be looked after, guided, given guidance, given protection by mom and dad. So in my personal opinion, HB 10 is a great step in the right direction. Let's see, back to the article. And Democrats and public school supporters say expanding education freedom accounts will take away state money that should be spent on public schools. HB 10 lays out a number of requirements for public schools, as well as a list of rights that parents have to be informed about regarding what public schools are teaching and what their children are doing during the school day. Sounds like a great idea to me. Let's see. For instance, the bill lists the rights to opt a student out of sex education courses, choose not to participate in any non-academic survey, receive all educational records for their children within 10 days of asking, review instructional materials, and others. Many of those already allowed under existing state law. The bill also requires school districts to adopt policies to encourage parental cooperation with teachers over homework, attendance, and discipline. So all still sounds pretty good to me, ladies and gentlemen. Too bad we don't have that on this side of the Connecticut River in the state of Vermont. But, there's always tomorrow. We'll have to see. Let's see. Back to the article. HB 10 also includes the right for parents to inquire of the school or school personnel and promptly receive accurate, truthful, and complete disclosure regarding any and all matters related to their minor child, unless an immediate answer cannot be provided when the initial request is made. That requirement does not apply to information brought to any counselor, school psychologist, school nurse, or other certified health care provider that is reasonably expected to be privileged. And that's kind of touchy for me. With respect to our kids, mom and dad should have access to that so-called privileged information so they can decide the best course of action for their minor child. But anyway, I think HB 10 still is a step in the right direction. The bill allows school staff to withhold information if they, quote, have clear and convincing, end quote, evidence that disclosing it could lead to the child being abused by their parent. And it also allows parents to sue the school if they allege any part of the bill is being violated. Let's see. SB 295, meanwhile, removes income caps from the Education Freedom Account program, which allows parents to access at least $4,182 per year in state funding to use toward non-public school education expenses. Currently, that program is limited to, quote, families making 350% of the federal poverty level or less, or $112,000, $525 for a family of four. SB 295 imposes a 10,000 student cap on the program in the first year of the expansion, the 2025-26 school year, and would increase the cap by 25% per year if demand for the program hits at least 90% of the previous year's cap. With the advent of homeschooling and with what's been going on at home in public schools, ladies and gentlemen, I think this program is probably apt to expand greatly. Let's see. The EFA program had 5,321 students at the start of 2024-2025 school year under the 350% federal poverty level cap, according to the Department of Education. So this sounds like on the east side of the Connecticut River, ladies and gentlemen, that the voters got a huge step in the right direction. The population of New Hampshire took their education in the right direction. And I'm not going to comment too much on H 454 in the Vermont legislature because by the time of airing of this program, H 454 possibly may have been through a number of bouts through the sausage maker again, because as of last Friday, there was an agreement with the Committee of Conference, but like I said, this is Tuesday morning, and by airing of this show, the legislature will have been meeting at least one full day, which means H 454 could possibly change from what we saw come out on Friday. But our legislature should be looking to the east to find better ways to satisfy the needs of our young students to improve not only the education outcomes, but also to improve the mental health and well-being of our kids. We know that there are challenges in schools, and we know that the way the schools are going right now, there are issues that need to be resolved. And a lot of it is tax-related, the cost of education. We have healthcare costs in education that in H 454 there are no solutions. So there's a lot of question marks, and with this revelation out of New Hampshire, I hope that parents and legislators and teachers look to the east to see if we can't maybe find some good solutions to the problems that we have in Vermont. I know not to beat my own drum here, but H89 is a bill I introduced with a whole number of co-sponsors. It is a school choice bill. I think that in conjunction with some of the governor's proposal, I think could be much better for the state of Vermont, but we're going to have to wait and see until next session, because H 454 has been through the meat grinder so many times this past session in 5 months' time that trying to throw more school choice in, which it doesn't look like 454 actually has more. I think it actually limits school choice. It limits some of the independent schools that are operating right now in Vermont, which is troublesome to a lot of parents who are taking advantage of school choice. We have some districts that are tuitioning districts, and some of these districts I think are going to find that they have lost some of the options that they've had, and that will probably not go over very well with a lot of the taxpayers and voters here. So I want to just get back to the last couple of paragraphs here in this article. Let's see. It says, however, a group of, quote, priority guideline, unquote, students would not be subject to that cap, according to the new law. Let's see. That would include students already enrolled in the EFA program, siblings of students enrolled in the program, children with disabilities, and students in families making up to 350% of the federal poverty levels. Both bill signings represent the culmination of years of work by conservatives. Efforts in previous years to lift income caps on education freedom accounts were voted down in the Senate, while House Republicans have spent 4 years attempting and failing to pass a parental bill of rights. So congratulations to the New Hampshire legislature and the governor of New Hampshire for finally getting those two bills across the finish line. I'm sure there are going to be tweaks that will need to be made, or they'll find that they need to make them in the future. But with respect to the western side of the Connecticut River, over here in Vermont, I think we're going to have a little bit more of a struggle. I think maybe next session we'll definitely be finding out what some of these new proposals with regard to H 454, should it pass. Some of the committees that are mentioned in the bill are going to need to get a lot of work done in a very short period of time. I know that in 454, the timeline was made to be much faster, much sooner for this full implementation. We're going to have to see if that actually happens. But we know over here on this side of the Connecticut River that school taxing and the burden on the average, everyday, hardworking taxpayer of Vermont is just, we've reached our limit here. We've reached our limit. We know something must be done to save money while still improving on the education system here. I don't know that 454 will be the be-all, end-all. We'll have to see where it works out. But it's always nice to see, especially being as close as it is, New Hampshire. We have an example on the other side of the river as to where we should be going in our Green Mountain state. Hopefully it won't take long for the winds of change to blow across the river, and we can actually see some positive change. We can see some school choice and parental bill of rights in this state, so we can start seeing the outcomes, the scores, the test scores, and the ability of our young people, our students, when they graduate, to be able to get out into the workforce, get out into college, and be able to perform the way they need to be able to be prosperous. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of the first segment. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. You're listening to Right Side Up. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. I'm flying solo this week. All my co-hosts are busy. But I want to get back into the show real quick here. We were talking for a segment about some of the great things that the New Hampshire legislature did regarding school choice and regarding parental bill of rights. Hopefully the winds of change blow across the river to Vermont, and we start seeing that happening in our legislature very quickly. But I wanted to get back to the western side of the Connecticut River and talk about some energy issues that we have in this state. So we've got, as you know, the Global Warming Solutions Act. But we also have on the table, pinned to the wall right now, let's see, in the Energy Committee, let's see, what do we got here? H62. Statement of purpose of bill is introduced. This bill proposes to change the state's greenhouse gas reduction requirements to goals and repeal the Vermont Climate Council. Well, why do I say that? Why would I bring that up? This next article, thanks to, let's see, Rob Roper, who is on Substack, but he's also here on Granite Grok, our friends on Granite Grok, dated June 15th. There is no affordable, equitable way. Let's get right into this. As the Vermont Climate Council punches away at a document that will, I assume, be heralded as, quote, the plan to meet the greenhouse gas reduction mandates of the Global Warming Solutions Act, I'm happy to say a few honest, semi-sane voices have emerged in their debate. Will a majority of the council heed their admonitions? I doubt it, but all the more reason to highlight them here. For sure, no one else in Vermont media will. Well, Rob, we're here banging the pots and pans with you, joining in every chance we get. So back to the article. First prize goes to Billy Coster of the Agency of Natural Resources. Not a formal council member, but he does serve as a chair of a subcommittee. When the council was reviewing its recommended actions items for the Climate Action Plan, CAP, Coster observed, "This seems to suggest that these action items will get us to the 2030 target, and I just don't think that's accurate. I just don't think there's an affordable and equitable way, even if we were to join WCI, the Western Climate Initiative, tomorrow and put into place these other programs, that we could hit the 2030 target in an affordable and equitable way." He kept bringing this up, affordable and equitable way. So this seems to create this false narrative that all we need to do is these things and we'll hit the target. I don't think we've seen that as feasible. The likelihood that it all gets done and is implemented in time to reduce emissions on pace to meet 2030 is unlikely at best. So this is misleading from my perspective. So the author gets back. No way. False narrative. Misleading. Yep. Michelle Boomhauer of the Agency of Transportation chimed in. Yeah, I think it doesn't acknowledge the Treasurer's report, which said even at the highest fee level in a cap and invest program taxing fossil fuels, we wouldn't meet 2030. And there's no reference to the Treasurer's report here either. I don't think we're being transparent with the public by not including the findings we've already calculated. So, back to the author. So thank you for pointing out that the council and the legislature, for that matter, is paying zero attention to the hard numbers analysis of what meeting these mandates will actually cost and what is actually doable. The Treasurer's report she refers to determined the cap and invest was too expensive, too regressive, too complicated to do on our own as a small state, and no possible partnership with other states currently exists. So yeah, But these genius planners of our economic future refuse to acknowledge data that we don't want to hear. Cap and invest is in their plan. Now, I just need to disagree a little bit with the author here. There are people in our legislature today, currently, who would love to see the H-62 come off the wall so that these mandates can be reduced to goals so that we don't set ourselves up for failure. We don't set ourselves up to be sued and lose because we haven't met the mandated goals. The only way that we can do that is put pressure on the chair of the Energy Committee so that this bill, which is sitting there, it's been introduced, can get debated in committee, get out to the floor, and be voted on. That's how we fix this right here. It should be easy. The problem is, like the author says, like Rob Roper says, there are some in the legislature who want to ignore this. So I just wanted to point that out. I want to get back to this article because it is very good. Regarding cost realities, Council member David Mears spoke an obvious truth. Well, obvious to anybody not drunk on the Kool-Aid. I think the headwinds are more challenging than this climate action plan document captures. There was a shift in state politics in Vermont, and I think there's less support for the state to step in and play the role of global climate leader than there was. And this is a true statement. We realize there are a number of us. There are 50, 60, possibly 70 members or more who realize this is not achievable. This is very costly. The problem is there is a very select few in our Vermont state legislature who want to address this and resolve this problem. So let me get back to the article here. Let's see. Whether you agree that the state body politic has shifted, the legislature thinks that it has shifted. And this quote is correct. It has shifted. So the legislative ability and willingness to take on a larger role in the absence of the federal funding isn't there. This is true. We have less federal money available and no tax capacity left at the state level to backfill the federal hole, let alone fund the massive expansion of green policies necessary to implement this not a planned plan. The Democrats who control the environmental committees refused this year to fund or even seriously discuss funding just the fuel dealer registry, they said, was so critical to keep. But here's how absurd this whole farce really is. During a presentation by the highly paid by us taxpayers, expert consultants from the Stockholm Environment Institute who put together the pathways recommendations for this plan, Sylvia Ulloa, confessed, "We are assuming that there are funds available to implement these measures, and we are not considering any constraints, for example, in terms of the labor that is required to implement these weatherizations or other types of restrictions that might exist in terms of the implementation of these policies." With what little respect I can muster, that assumption is, to use drastic understatement because I can't find suitable vocabulary. This is a quote from the author. The labor force is not available. The other restrictions that might exist do, in fact, exist. So how much did we pay for this utterly useless set of recommendations? It's like giving driving directions to somebody who doesn't drive a car or doesn't have a car. In regard to the labor force issue, one council member noted, in the criteria section of the plan, it says, make certain there are enough trade workers in the state. Well, how do you do that? I think we need to be more specific there. It's taken literally 5 years of these meetings for someone to ask that question. Nobody answered it, but the asker gets a smiley face sticker for asking. This is a quote from the author. Some council members have poked holes in the great green hope that the Make Big Oil pay scheme will magically make the money materialize to carry out the cap. Sorry, that's not going to happen. Department of Public Services Secretary and Council Member Kerrick Johnson described the lawsuit scam situation thus: "This is like take a swing, and if it comes in with money, great, but I have no idea how realistic it is that we're going to get anything. It's going to take resources, and we'll see." So this is in reference to the Climate Superfund Act that came out last year. And by the way, H518 has more than 50 sponsors and co-sponsors to repeal the Climate Superfund. So that is also in play, hopefully next session, very strongly, ladies and gentlemen. So there is a push to get this stopped. Let's see, another member, and the author is not sure, said, "It's 10 years from now. I worry it creates false hope." So that's all this expensive, nonsensical, half-decade-long and going exercise in Kabuki Theater is about: manufacturing the false hope that the climate warriors in the State House are doing something to lead the world in saving the planet, when in reality they can't. They're not doing it. They're perpetrating a fraud on the people of Vermont and costing taxpayers millions in wasted money to do it. That is true. That is wasting a lot of our money. So all of this begs the question: if the money isn't there to run these programs, and the legislators who passed this boondoggle aren't willing to raise it or move forward with any significant policy that would require an on-the-record vote, then how can we justify keeping Vermont taxpayers on the hook for the lawsuits we're facing because of their unworkable law? It's unjustifiable. Repeal the Global Warming Solutions Act. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to cover this, ladies and gentlemen, because we have H62. It's sitting on the wall in the Energy Committee, and the best way we can get it off the wall is pressure to the Energy Committee. And the chair and the vice chair and the ranking member need to be contacted by you, the people, hardworking taxpayers of Vermont. Go to vermont.gov, go to committees. Once you go on to the vermont.gov website, click on committees. You can click on energy. You can find out if there is a list of the committee members, and you can find the chair and the vice chair and the ranking member. And actually, you could, if you want, there are a number of Republicans who are on that committee who are anxious to take that bill up, to have it debated, to be able to have it get voted out of committee so that the entire House can vote on it and pass it to the Senate. And I know that the governor will happily sign that, because the governor doesn't want to see us waste valuable time, and he does not want to see this state waste valuable money financing lawsuits that are going to get us nowhere. It's guaranteed money to be burned to gain us nothing. So the best thing I can say is, with help from we the people in the audience, Vermonters who are sick and tired of having the legislature dictate to them what they must do, your government is supposed to work for you and not tell you what to do. So getting involved, this is one of the reasons why we do what we do here at Right Side Up. We try to find ways to inform our listeners and enable our listeners to get involved, to be a part of the process, to be able to stop the regulations that past legislatures have forced upon us and now put our hard-earned tax dollars at risk to be lost in lawsuits. So I hope that I'm able to inform you enough and spark you to want to get involved. Send an email, make a phone call to your legislator, and see about getting involved and making a change. So we've come to the end of another segment here, ladies and gentlemen, so we will have to return in a couple of minutes. You are listening to Right Side Up.